Anyways, so I'm gonna give you guys an aerial view. See down there. Guys, there's a horsey. Can you see that horsey? So big. A giant horsey. Oh, there's another one. Horsies. So big. Look at its little snout thingy. Hi, horsey. Bye. Look at that beautiful horses. Was allowed to chuck it up in the moon. Okay, so I don't really know what we're doing right now. Besides walking somewhere. I don't know where that somewhere is. So, yeah. We just went to the candy store. I totally forgot to videotape.
Forgot to do what?
Oh, I was gonna videotape me in the candy store trying to figure out which candy I want. But forgot. Oh, and my short is the Beatles for the win. I don't really know what to talk about.
Maybe instead of showing them your nose, show them where you're at.
Oh, yeah, we're in Colonial Williamsburg. I probably should have mentioned that in the beginning. In case you couldn't notice, everything is like really old tiny and colonial. And it's in Williamsburg. Wow, what a surprise. Don't you think that we're in Colonial Williamsburg and everything is colonial and in Williamsburg? Let's see. Monitor vehicles prohibited 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Apparently, so. Bunch of people wearing blue shorts. Don't know what they're doing here. Maybe you can tell me. And yeah. Sorry if it's a bit wobbly, but I don't have a gimbal like Dad does. There are some pretty flowers right here. Oh, they're just taking a photo. Can I come through? I hope so. More pretty flowers. Very clear water. I would have expected it to be dirty and not clear at all.
Keep sliding on in. Thank you. Welcome to Shoemakers. Feel free to spread back out. If you want to come up to the counter and take a nice close look at what we got up here, please do. Pass them around if that's easier so everybody gets a nice look at them. These are the more typical men's shoes for the 1760s and 1770s. Very much what you would have found here in Williamsburg because they were mass produced. This is not a custom-made product for each individual person. This is stuff that gets churned out day after day after day because shoemakers get paid by the pair, not by the hour. So if you want to make a living at this every single day, every 10 to 12 hours, you have to finish a pair of shoes. And that means you're going to spend a lot of time making very average sizes that lots of people can buy. So 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s in the more popular styles are the safe things to make. And if you wear, say, a US men's 8, 9, 10, or 11 today, you can probably go to any store you like and find plenty of things in your size. And those are the same average sizes as in the 18th century. The 7 through 10 is English sizing, what was employed then, which is one size smaller than US. So US 8 to 11 is English 7 to 10. That means that you don't have trouble buying shoes. Now, if you do have a hard time, if you've got that larger foot, that wider foot, that narrow foot, we can make something that will fit you pretty quickly, pretty easily. And as makers, you got paid by being paid by the pair. The wages are determined by the style and quality of the shoe, not the size or the length of time in making it. So we just want to get it all done as fast as possible so we can move on to the next thing. It means you get your custom shoes within 24 hours, usually faster than Amazon's going to come to you now. We do different styles. There are, average everyday shoes, dress shoes. We can make riding boots, though we don't make those that often, and those always would have been custom made. Lots of measurements for those, and very expensive. Only worn in riding as well, so not a lot of demand for them. And we only make men's shoes in here. Women's shoemaking was a different branch of the trade, and you had to learn in a separate apprenticeship, and it would be different shops. So you have 7 to 14 shops in Williamsburg, 60 to 100 shoemakers. About a third of the shops in town make women's shoes. And then you have merchants importing shoes from overseas. That's where most of the kids are going to be getting shoes from. They're going to be a little bit cheaper for kids and for adults from those merchants. And kids' shoes are cheap because of who's making them, apprentices. It's a practice pair. It's something somebody was learning to make shoes by producing. And you don't pay apprentices, so no wages and kind of low-end work that doesn't use up a lot of material, cheap shoe, which is good with growing feet. Now, if you have questions about anything you see in the shop, please don't hesitate to ask. We're all working on various different parts of the process. He's making a pair of common shoes for one of our gardeners, and he's got it lasted. That's the upper tacked to the insole. You can see that next one. He's preparing what we call the welt. It's a strip that's sewn on around the outer edge of the forepart of the shoe. And it's what you sew the outsole to in the end. So he's trimming off some excess leather from that. And then I think he'll be about ready to start sewing the welt, to the insole of that shoe. Got to make the thread too, which is what I just finished up doing. And this is so I can sew a second sole onto this pair of shoes that I'm making for one of the wheelwrights. He wants double-soled shoes, a lot more durable. So I got the first sole on, I got to put the second one on now. This adds time to the process. It takes about an hour for a good shoemaker to stitch a sole on. So it's 1 hour to put the upper to the insole. It's another hour to put the outsole to the welt. But in a double-soled shoe, you now have to put, this is a midsole, you have to put the outsole to the midsole. So for a pair of double-soled shoes, you're looking at 6 hours and 36 feet of stitching just in sole work. Yeah.
What kind of leather do you use?
We use leather from cattle. Ox and bull hide is typically used for the sole leather. Heavier, denser material from an older, heavier animal. We use calf skins for the tops. Thinner, finer leather from a younger, lighter animal. And it's the age and the weight of the animal that dictate the thickness, the density, and the use of the skin or hide.
If you were making a single-soled pair of shoes, would the sole be split like that one?
It would be split, but not there.
Mm-hmm.
There's an original pair of double-soled shoes that has a pieced sole done in this manner. And the reason it's done there, probably to give a little bit more flexibility on that double-soled pair. Usually the seat piece, as it's called, is done under the heel. So if you, could you pick up that shoe right there and pass it back to that gentleman? Yep. If you look at the heel of that one, you can see on the sole layer a diagonal cut. And the reason that you might have a piece there, it's efficiency of material. If your sole leather doesn't come all the way back, you just grab some out of the scrap bin and fill it in the heel where it doesn't matter as much because the heel itself is going to be built out of material out of the scrap bin.
So that shoe that you had in your hand, is the welt going to be put on that?
The welt's already on there.
Where is that?
There's the welt.
Oh, okay. So that attaches the top to the sole?
Yep. Well, the sole to the rest of the shoe. So here's a cutaway. There's the insole. You can see that.
Yeah, yeah,
There's the upper.
yeah.
There's the welt.
Oh, okay, is that strip?
Yep. And there would have been excess leather here that was all trimmed away so that you got a nice flush fit in the end.
How much would a pair of shoes sold for?
Average men's shoes usually run about 5 or 6 shillings a pair, assuming they're made in Virginia. That's pretty affordable. Good tradesmen here could earn 5 or 6 shillings in a day. So that's a reasonable price, a reasonable charge. Imported shoes of the same kind of general style will probably be a little bit cheaper. So you do have that price option available to you, provided you've got an average size. But shoes are affordable. Most adults own 5 to 6 pairs.
Oh, really?
Where are they importing them from?
England. Now, English imports today are usually pretty expensive. But the reason that something coming from England was going to be cheaper than something made locally, 200 years ago, it's the same reason that something from China is going to be cheaper than something made locally now. It's the labor cost. There's a surplus of skilled labor in it, which means that the wages per pair, in the case of shoemaking, are much lower than they would be over here. And you can see that same kind of depression or wage depression in different cities in North America. If you went to Philadelphia, those shoemakers are not doing so well because there's 1,500 of them. So their skill becomes less valuable. Not less needed, but less valuable. In London, it's even worse because there's 16 to 30,000 shoemakers there. And everybody tries to make 1 pair of shoes a day. That's going to put a lot of shoes on the market, and that results in them being pretty cheap because shipping cost doesn't really bump the price that much. A barrel full of 100 pairs of shoes stuck in the hold of a ship, the shipping cost broken out per pair of shoes ends up being pretty low. Sometimes making thread gets, if you do it right, it works really well. That keeps it lets you measure it out and draws it out to the right length. That would have been about 12 feet of 9-stranded cord. But if you don't snip it in the right way or you drop something the wrong way, you can end up with just a huge knot, and it's a lot easier to just pitch it out and start over. So the way we do it, we wrap it around the thumb and down to the elbow and then up between each one of your fingers. And doing that and going back to your starting point gives you 12 feet, but 1 strand of it. So you repeat. And 9 times around gives you 12 feet, or depending on I get 12 feet because I got a longer arm. I think he usually gets about 10 feet. And then if you drop it and pull it out in the right way, success. You get your 9 strands of long cord. Then you can taper the ends and then coat in pine pitch and pine rosin. That's the point that I've gotten to here, and I've actually twisted this already. And then you can burnish it. This will melt some more of that pitch and rosin into the thread. Pitch and rosin, well, anybody ever climbed up a pine tree or carried in the Christmas tree and gotten sap on your hand? Yeah, if you cook it down, that's what we're running on our threads. Makes them pretty sticky, which allows them to bind together, but it also makes them rot resistant. And if you coat this well enough, as you're sewing, you should bleed off some of the pitch and rosin into your seam and help seal it up. So it allows you to make pretty decent shoes. If the thread's bad, though, the shoes aren't going to be nearly as good. Better shoes are made in the summer when the pitch and the rosin works a lot easier. It gets pretty brittle in the cold.
And your shop isn't heated?
Shop's heated by a fireplace in the period. And we've got a steam radiator in here today, but even still, in the winter, some days it just does get too cold to sew. You can't get the temperature up enough. Now, historically, the winter could be a pretty rough time to be a shoemaker. You may find yourself laid off. It's just a case of you have less daylight, so you can't get as much done, and you're fighting that colder temperature. So it's going to be harder to get quality work done in the amount of daylight that you have. That may be when you start being willing to take on repair work. Generally lower grade, and too time consuming to bother with because it doesn't pay very well. In the summer, you just want to make new shoes because you've got 14 hours of daylight, more. You're going to haul out and make as many pairs of shoes, maybe 7 to 8 pairs of shoes a week during the summer.
Once that upper shoe's on the last, does the sole get nailed to that?
Now the sole gets sewn. So like I did with that midsole, if that was just a regular shoe, that split would have been back under the heel, and that would have been it. That would have been the outsole, just stitched in place by hand. You don't start seeing pegging of soles or nailing, pinning of soles until the 19th century. Now we peg the heels, so if you flip any of these heels over, you'll see the white dots of the wooden heels, or the wooden pegs.
And does that peg go right through to the inner sole?
On the first layer it might, which is not a problem. It's a wooden peg. You can clip the head off and no problem. And it's not going to, the pegs are going to grind down at an even rate with the leather, so you're not forcing them up into your foot. We've got a little bit of a line formed outside, so I can take one more question.
Can you tell me about that thing on the fireplace?
Mousetrap.
What?
Mousetrap.
Oh, I didn't expect you to say that.
Heavy wooden block. There's a paddle inside. On the same principle as I have a hard trap, where you bait the pedal and steps on it. But instead of dropping a gate, this drops a solid oak block. It works pretty well, actually. We loaned it to the blacksmith. We don't have a mouse problem in here. The blacksmiths did, but that thing works pretty well. Period, we might have kept a cat. I think that would have been a bit more popular for some people.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you. That was different. Yeah. See ya. Daddy, how do you stop videotaping? Just turn it
Push
off?
the button again.